Time by Carrie Chris is 6 p.m. Time for CBX Business News. The business news headlines is brought to you by CBX Wealth Management, making more possible.
Election season heats up. Regional promises spark hope for growth and energy markets fluctuate. Hello and welcome to CBX Business News for Monday, August 11, 2025. I am Rochelle Moncrief. Thanks for joining us. Coming up in the newscast, locally, election bell rings. Jamaica heads to the polls on September 3. Economic scorecard on the line. On the regional front, election promises continue. Guyana's People's Progressive Party Civic pledges to halve electricity costs and boost small business growth. And over on the global stage, WTI crude oil prices sink to a 2-month low on Russia-Ukraine peace deal hopes. Stay tuned as we unpack these stories and more right after the break.
Wealth is not simply counted in dollars or cents, but in the time we spend with love, in love, giving love. Wealth is not simply a means to an end. It is the means to live out loud. Wealth is more than money. It's about family, the memories you create, the legacy you leave behind, and your ability to enjoy life in the moment. It's also about seeing the CBX possibilities and seizing investment opportunities to achieve the future you want and deserve. Which is why CBX Wealth will focus on your investments. Wealth is not simply counted in dollars or cents, but in the time we spend with love, in love, giving love. Wealth is not simply a means to an end. It is the means to live out loud. Wealth is more than money. It's about family, the memories you create, the legacy you leave behind, and your ability to enjoy life in the moment. It's also about seeing the CBX possibilities and seizing investment opportunities to achieve the future you want and deserve. Which is why CBX Wealth will focus on your investments so you can experience more. Because true wealth is truly more. To start investing today, call 876-926-7767.
The local news is brought to you by Derriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments.
Welcome back to CBX Business News. We begin with news that could reshape Jamaica's business landscape. Jamaica's political clock is officially ticking as Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness announced September 3 as Election Day, a move that could thrust the nation's economic future into uncertainty. Holness says his call to the polls is more than just a democratic exercise. It is a direct challenge to Jamaicans to judge his government's economic stewardship, declaring that his administration has successfully multiplied national resources and grown the economy. For markets, the election will be a litmus test for policy continuity and rising inflation, fluctuating currency values, and critical investment decisions. Prime Minister Holness, who also serves as leader of the Jamaica Labour Party JLP, made the announcement at a JLP mass rally in Halfway Tree on Sunday.
I now declare that nomination day will be Monday, August 18th. And the general election date is fixed at Wednesday, September 3.
Prime Minister Holness also announced that 4 local government by-elections will run concurrently with the national vote.
I also wish to inform you that local government by-elections in the Chancery Hall Division, the Olympic Gardens Division, the Seabright Gardens Division, and the Denham Town Division will be held concurrently with the general election in those constituencies.
Prime Minister of Jamaica, Dr. Andrew Holness. With the business community watching closely, any disruptions could prompt heightened volatility in foreign direct investment, capital markets, and major infrastructure projects. In the wake of heightened investor scrutiny following recent developments around National Commercial Bank Financial Group's NCBFG bond portfolio, the bank has issued firm assurances regarding its readiness to repay maturing bonds and maintain stable dividend payments. Concerns have emerged recently as NCBFG bonds approached maturity, sparking questions about the bank's capacity to meet its obligations without disrupting shareholder returns. Speaking during the group's investor briefing for Q3 on Friday, the group's Chief Executive Officer, Robert Almeida, moved to emphasize the bank's financial management strategy.
Yeah, short answer is we're always prepared to repay, and the sources of repayment as a growth company, the sources of repayment are a combination of internally generated cash and refinancing. So I think the short answer is we're always prepared to repay the debt that is maturing. The sources of that repayment come from multiple sources, and that's what every organization that is actually every sustainable organization does. And in fact, out of the recent offering, prepayment notices went out to a great number of note holders, existing bond holders, that their debt will be prepaid.
NCBFG Chief Executive Officer Robert Almeida. In other news, Trans-Jamaica Highway is reporting a 13% year-over-year increase in revenue for the second quarter of 2025, reaching US $22.5 million. For the first half of the year, revenue rose 14% to US $45 million, fueled by sustained growth in commuter traffic and the accelerated adoption of the company's electronic tolling system, T-Tag, a cornerstone of its ongoing modernization strategy. The company's unaudited financial results for the quarter ended June 30 revealed that company's net profit for the quarter increased 24% to US $8.7 million, with year-to-date net earnings rising 28% to US $17.7 million. This strong bottom-line growth reflects disciplined cost management, even as the company ramped up investments in marketing and upgraded tolling infrastructure to support the broader rollout of T-Tag. Meanwhile, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization EBITDA reached US $18 million in Q2, representing an 80% margin, slightly higher than the 79% recorded in the same period last year. This indicates robust core profitability amid increased operational spending. Finance cost also declined 4% year over year to US $3.4 million for the quarter, driven by scheduled debt repayments that have strengthened the company's capital structure. Total liabilities also fell by US $7 million since December 2024, now standing at US $222 million. And now for news from the Bank of Jamaica on how the currency markets traded today. In Monday's currency trading session, the US dollar is selling for $161.17, the Canadian for $117.48, the British pound for $215.85, while $189.48 is the going rate for the euro. And now for news from the JSE on how the local equities markets traded today. In Monday's trading session, the JSE market activity resulted in the trading of 104 stocks, of which 41 advanced, 43 declined, and 20 traded firm. The winners are NCB Financial Group, Productive Business Solutions 9.25% perpetual cumulative USD, Spur Tree Spices Jamaica, and Lasco Financial Services. The losers are KLE Group, AS Bryden and Sons Holdings, Sterling Investments, and MFS Capital Partners. The main index declined by 393.30 points, or 0.13%, to close at 307,981.39 points. The junior market index advanced by 5.12 points, or 0.15%, to close at 3,428.58 points.
And it's time for Market Education Feature, brought to you by CariCris, Regional Ratings, Global Standard.
In today's Market Education Feature, we'll be exploring the term penalty clause. A penalty clause is a contract provision that sets liquidated damages at an unreasonably high amount intended to punish a breach rather than to fairly compensate for actual harm. While parties can agree in advance on damages payable if a breach occurs, such amounts must be a reasonable estimate of anticipated losses. Courts generally uphold liquidated damages clauses that are proportionate to the harm caused, but will refuse to enforce penalty clauses that are excessive or punitive. For example, consider a lease where a tenant pays $1,000 per month in rent. If the lease requires the tenant to pay $750 per day for staying in the unit after the lease ends, this would likely be deemed a penalty clause. The daily charge is disproportionate to the actual harm caused by the tenant's holdover and would likely be unenforceable.
The Market Education Feature was brought to you by CariCris, Regional Ratings, Global Standards.
And that's it for the local news segment. Please stay with us. The regional news is up next.
The local news is brought to you by Darriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments.
Let's all get fit. This summer set drip. Hip dips and split. Power in the mind, let's get healthy with it. Sometimes the body's so hard, but the body wants it. And then your head is so hard, and it's so like this. So we gotta go 1, 2, 3. One more now. 1, 2, 3. Let's go. One more now. 1, 2, 3. One more now. 1, 2, 3, go.
Introducing the Corporate Services Unit, your go-to experts for corporate secretarial solutions. We offer statutory compliance, efficient minute taking, registered office address services, management of board and members meetings, setup and maintenance of corporate registers. Stay ahead with our proactive approach to new regulations. We operate under the Trust and Corporate Service Provider, licensed to the JCSD Trustee Services Limited. We're here to simplify your corporate journey, no matter the size of your company. Contact the Corporate Service Unit today and let's streamline your compliance journey together, because your success is our business.
Welcome back. And now for the regional business news. With just weeks to go before Guyana's crucial September 1 general elections, the People's Progressive Party Civic PPPC is turning up the heat on the campaign trail, promising to slash electricity bills by more than 50% and unleash a wave of support for small businesses across the country. Speaking at a campaign rally in Region 5 on Sunday, President of Guyana and leader of the PPPC, Dr. Irfan Ali, outlined plans to reduce energy costs, which will make Guyana one of the most competitive energy markets in the region.
When we speak about investing to reduce cost of living, it's about how we build our own capacity. How we build our own capacity to expand our production, to add value, and that value will be created when soon we bring down your cost of electricity by more than 50%.
But the plan goes deeper. The PPPC has also vowed to empower part-time workers and small entrepreneurs through access to technical training, financial capital, and market opportunities.
And we are not only talking about small business development grant. We don't want only to give our part-time workers bigger salaries. We want to help them to own their own businesses. We want to upskill them so they can take higher levels of permanent job. That is what we're about. That is why when we talk about small business support, we are talking about technical support. We are talking about financial support. We are talking about giving them the capital.
President of Guyana and leader of the PPPC, Dr. Irfan Ali. The Central Bank of the Bahamas has issued a strict directive to all supervised financial institutions, SFIS, to urgently review their client portfolios for any connections to a group of Haitian gang leaders currently subject to United Nations UN sanctions. The move follows instructions from the Office of the Attorney General and is enforced under Section 3A of the International Obligations, Economic and Ancillary Measures Amendment Act of 2019, aligning with the UN Security Council Resolution 2653/2022. The central bank has identified 7 individuals on the UN sanctions list whose assets must be scrutinized. These include Jimmy Cherizier, widely known as Barbecue, and other key figures linked to Haiti's ongoing gang violence crisis. Financial institutions are mandated to report all findings, whether positive or negative, to the central bank. Any confirmed links must also be communicated promptly to the Financial Intelligence Unit and the Attorney General's office. And despite recent tariff hikes by the United States, several members of the Barbados Small Business Association, SBA, remain confident that their operations will not be significantly affected. However, they are proactively exploring alternative markets to mitigate future risks. President of the SBA, Dr. Lynette Holder, says a recent survey of the association's manufacturing and agribusiness members highlights a strategic shift.
It suggests that the conversation around looking at others in the region, looking at Latin America, for example, and even further south, may be under contemplation by my firms, because they recognize that the traditional trading partners may not be as lucrative going forward. Majority of those polls felt, look, there was a need to look at the tax regime and how can government possibly reduce taxes now and other tariffs on imports, yes, but also generally in the marketplace.
President of the Small Business Association of Barbados, Lynette Holder. It's now time for news from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 23 securities, of which 8 advanced, 8 declined, and 7 traded firm. Today's winners are Guardian Holdings, Angostura Holdings, Grace Kennedy Limited, and JMMB Group, while leading the losers are Guardian Media, MedCorp, the West Indian Tobacco Company, and Trinidad Cement. Trading activity resulted in the following movements. The All TNT Index advanced by 6.57 points to close at 1,458.87. The Composite Index advanced by 4.02 points to close at 1,009.43. The Cross-Listed Index advanced by 0.18 points to close at 74. The SME Index, however, declined by 1.39 points to close at 96.43. And we take a short break, but please do stay with us. The international news segment with Nielsen Rose is up next.
To open a savings account for my son John. I really want him to start saving and managing his own money.
And I need for Safe to visit my father in New York.
Okay, based on what you said and our risk assessment, he will qualify for simplified customer due diligence requirements. I'll need your ID, proof of income, TRN, and John's ID as well.
Okay, here you go.
Opening an account is easier than you think using simplified customer due diligence requirements, also called CDD.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. In the international news today, China's Consumer Price Index, a CPI, was unchanged year over year in July, defying expectations for a 0.1% decline and following a modest 0.1% increase in June. The flat reading reflects a mixed inflation landscape, with non-food prices rising 0.3%, up from 0.1%, boosted by Beijing's consumer goods subsidies. Some key categories that saw modest gains include housing up 0.1%, clothing up
1.7% compared to 1.6%. Healthcare was up 0.5% versus 0.4%, while education was up 0.9%. Meanwhile, transportation costs fell 3.1%, easing from 3.7% in June. On the food front, prices declined 1.6%, the steepest fall in 5 months, compared to a 0.3% dip previously. Core inflation, excluding food and energy, rose 0.8% year over year, the highest in 17 months, up from 0.7% in June. On a monthly basis, the CPI climbed 0.4%, beating forecasts of 0.3% and reversing June's 0.1% decline. This marked the strongest monthly increase since January. WTI crude futures dropped to $63.30 per barrel on Monday, marking their lowest level in over 2 months. This drop comes amid growing optimism for a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, which could ease global supply disruptions. Last Friday, President Donald Trump announced plans to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin on August 15 in Alaska to discuss ending the conflict. A potential agreement may lead to the lifting of sanctions on Russian crude, potentially boosting global supply. Adding to the downward pressure on oil prices, the U.S. has intensified pressure on Russia to agree to a ceasefire, threatening secondary sanctions on countries purchasing Russian oil. New U.S. tariffs on imports from several trade partners took effect last week, raising concerns about global economic growth and energy demand. Bitcoin climbed over 2% to approximately $122,000 on Monday, approaching a new all-time high after a month-long consolidation. The rally was driven by bullish signals from Washington and growing institutional interest. Key catalysts include reports of a potential executive order from President Donald Trump that would permit cryptocurrency investments in 401k retirement plans, potentially unlocking up to $9 trillion in capital for crypto markets. Continued strong inflows into Bitcoin ETFs, signaling robust investor appetite, increased buying from treasury-backed firms, including MicroStrategy, whose executive chairman, Michael Saylor, announced Sunday on X that the company will expand its 76.8 billion Bitcoin holdings. Investors are also eyeing this week's U.S. inflation data, which could shape the Federal Reserve's next policy moves, adding another layer of volatility to crypto markets. In a bold post-merger move, Paramount has clinched exclusive U.S. rights to UFC in a landmark $7.7 billion deal with TKO Group. The agreement spans 7 years starting in 2026, covering all 43 annual live UFC events. Under the new arrangement, Paramount will stream every fight at no additional costs, marking a major shift from ESPN's current pay-per-view model. The deal positions Paramount as a heavyweight in live sports streaming, leveraging the UFC's massive fan base to boost its platform in the competitive media landscape. This is Paramount's first major play since merging with Skydance, signaling a strategic pivot toward premium sport content. And those were your international business stories. After the break, do rejoin us for your recap.
recap our top stories. In the local news, Jamaica heads to the poll on September 3, economic scorecard on the line. Regionally, Guyana's PPPC pledges to halve electricity costs and boost small business growth. And internationally, WTI crude oil prices sink to 2-month low on Russia-Ukraine peace deal hopes. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of Nielsen Rose and the entire production team, I'm Rochelle Moncrief. Thanks for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.
Chevrolet Bridgman, CEO, Caribbean Insurance Brokers. You're watching CBX, your region, your business.